I hope that you not only learned a lot from each other, but that you are ready to get some really great wisdom and insight and still ask more questions for me to throw at Van-Neisha. This is kind of like the speed round where we just get to ask you lots and lots of things and you don't have any time to think about it.
Like speed dating?
Like speed dating. Yeah,
Wow.
that's it. This is an entire room speed dating just you at the same time.
Never done it.
This is not weird at all.
I'm the magnet.
Did your husband show up tonight?
You know what? Let's put him on the spot. He's not here.
Okay.
He's not here.
Okay, we're good.
So,
All right, well, some of these questions, this is like hard-hitting journalism.
okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
I think this person might have been confused because I asked you this earlier and they're wrong. But
right.
I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
Why do you still have an Android?
That is a lie from the pit of hell.
How do you feel about Android users?
I feel like they are not saved.
Okay.
But I'm not God. I'm just saying.
Thank God for grace. Thank God for grace.
They fallen. I feel like they fallen.
I'm not gonna lie. I have separate text threads. If you're a green bubble, you get a separate text thread from my blue bubble friends.
Because you're just like negative. Like just yeah.
This is good.
If somebody with a green bubble texts me, I like lay my phone down. I might not text back.
I don't. Oh, that's good. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
It just makes you question their judgment.
It does. Their character, everything.
I'm just kidding. I love all my Android friends. I really, really do. Here's a slightly more important question that I think is a bit more on point. How did you find your five? Right, you talked about those women that you got all around you. How did you find your five?
How did I find my five? Well, my five found me, actually. She actually was the master. She's the brain behind. This is my best friend, Lauren, and she literally was like, one day, I know like all four of these amazing women, and I just want y'all to come to dinner. And we was like, okay. And so she like created this like beautiful invitation. It was like this top tier like situation. So we knew each other a little bit, but she was the person that we had in common. And so we went to dinner. We went to Hard Shell one night, and we have not like separated since. We literally sat at the table and bonded in that night. And just from there have built. But I believe you need a five. Like if you think about it, Jesus had 12, he had his 10, he had his groups. And I believe we are supposed to like duplicate that and do the same thing. So my five found me, but I'm so glad they did.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. You seem like this. You walk in a room and you're like the de facto leader. Right? Like you just have this kind of charisma about you. You have this little personality aura going on. So when you walk in the room, I imagine everyone looks at you. So I personally find it incredibly comforting to know that it was other people who kind of dragged you in.
Yeah.
And they've been an incredible resource to you. It wasn't something you built. It was something you were open to.
Yes. That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important. That's
yes.
good. Can I be your six?
Yeah, you can. Can he be our sixth, Lauren? It's only girls.
Uh-huh.
She said she's going to pray about it.
Yeah. I have an iPhone, if that helps.
I have an iPhone.
So here's another one. This one's somewhat of like a 2 or 3 part question, but each one builds on us. I'm going to ask you one at a time.
Okay.
What are the specific ways you have felt the Lord lead you from one career path or career place to another? So
every time it's time to leave, I feel uneasy, like the grace is lifted. So like the grace is lifted, but I have a peace. So, and just because I have peace, it doesn't mean that it's easy, right? But I have a peace about it. I could literally be walking into like hell, like a war zone, but I have a peace about it because I know God sent me. So every single time that it was time for me to leave a place, I just literally feel like the grace of it was lifted, and I could feel things got harder. It got harder to do stuff. It got harder. So, I'm more agitated easily, and I'm giving my all. I'm giving my best, but I can like feel it all. And so, yeah, that's always my tall tale sign. Like when that's happening, I'm like, oh man, here we go. I know it now. I know it.
God's about to really throw a curveball.
Yeah.
So what advice would you then give to someone who is currently trying to discern if the Lord's leading them somewhere else?
First, I would say that and this is just me, I could be completely wrong, but I don't believe that when your heart is really to follow the will of God, that you could like be out of the will of God. Does that make sense? Like, I believe if you really are like, yo, God, I really want to follow you, but I have this choice and this choice, and I'm really trying to seek your heart for it, and I think you're like calling me to go this way, I really believe that God would redeem it, even if he really meant for you to go that way. Does that make sense? So I really feel like it's a heart posture. So I think you have to literally like search your heart, ask God to search your heart and really reveal like, God, which way am I supposed to go? And as long as you truly are like, I want to serve you and I want to be in your will, I don't think you can make a wrong decision because all things work together for your good, right? Romans 8:28 is real. And so even if I go right and God really meant for me to go left, he going to turn that thing. Like, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. So I think just to pause, my advice would be to pause and just pray and really ask like, God, what are you saying? And whatever you really discern that he's saying, lean into it. Lean into it.
Yeah. I think that's incredibly helpful. And that's advice that all of us can kind of cling to, and it's incredibly comforting. I think part of it is a lot of us, and I've asked myself this question as well. And, I was a pastor, and now I'm at a nonprofit, and you were at a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And I think we often have bad days or bad seasons. Mm-hmm. And so we ask ourselves, how do I know if I'm in the right job? Like, is this really what God has for me? Did I hear him right? Or am I just wasting my time and spinning my wheels and in no way fulfilling what God has on my life? Yeah. And what you're saying is that if you are truly seeking the will of God for your life, yeah, even in those seasons, not only can God use you, yeah, but God is going to correct the path.
He will. His goodness will chase you down and correct you.
That's awesome.
I know it for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. In your experience in public school, how were you able to spread the word of Christ and stand apart in your faith, specifically asking for those who are still in the public sector?
That's a great question. I think it's all about like showing up as you authentically, like, and again, not being afraid that you're going to turn off certain people because you will, and that's a part of it. But I think being you authentically, I think you're going to bless whoever you're there to bless, whoever you're there to, like, you know what I mean? Change something or spark something, you're going to do that, but you can't do that if you're showing up not authentic. So you can't be so worried about, like I am in the public sector and I have to separate my faith and my work. Like, you literally have to just show up as you. And it doesn't mean be a Bible like basher or thumper. Like, it doesn't mean that. But if you're in the break room reading the word of God, share it. It's like authentic as that, right? Or if you feel led to pray for somebody, pray for them or ask them, you know what I mean? Like, just spark conversation. But I think it's about being authentically you. How do you show up? And really asking God and being discerning too and praying and saying like, who are my people here, right? And like, what is the work that you've called me to do and lean into it. But you can't be afraid of rejection and you can't be afraid of people looking at you crazy because they're going to do that.
Yeah. You say you can't be afraid of rejection.
You can't be.
I am.
Okay.
I know I'm not alone, right? A number of us fear rejection.
I fear rejection.
So how do you overcome, because we all have insecurities, we all have fears, we all have a belief that we may be inadequate. Mm-hmm. So in those moments, how do you actually overcome that fear or that insecurity?
I literally have to go back to what God said about me. I'm not trying to be like really holy and holy in a doubt. I really just believe what God says about me. And I want you to too. Like, I really just believe that he calls me daughter, so that's what I am. He calls me holy, so that's what I am. Even when I mess up, I got to figure it out. I got to get back on track. Like, he calls me all these things, and that is what I am. And so because rejection is big for me, Lauren, right? Like, it is big for me. However, I'm just like, I can't fear it. I can't fear it. God has not given us the spirit of fear, so I can't fear it. I have to go on anyway, even if it exists. And even if I'm like, it comes up against me, I have to believe what God said about me. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier. You said you truly believe you have the gift of faith. And when you talk, but you mean that there's never a moment when your faith in God is actually in question. So Jordan said this earlier. You actually believe God at his word. You believe it. Yeah. And that seems to be where you're pulling so much of your strength. And I think a lot of us want to believe, right? We say we do, but we're kind of like the father whose son was fallen in the fire and we kept saying, Jesus, help me with my unbelief. We're asking him to increase our capacity for faith. your capacity, you're not Saint Teresa or something,
Not
but
at
your
all.
capacity for faith, it seems, is already at a level that rest of us aspire to. That's it. Just that's my, no. What did you like? How do you cultivate that kind of faith? Are there risks that you were taking before you had that taught you could trust God that way,
Yeah.
or is it just I wake up and
I
hey, I
don't
go
like
with it?
Jeremy. Listen, I don't like how you said like you just said you have the gift of faith. Like I don't like how that sound.
Well, you can say
I
it your own way.
So let me say it my way. I literally just I feel like I heard God say like the past couple of days, like that is why you're able to do the things you do. Cause I actually was really confused. Like I was like, God, why do I keep doing this crazy stuff? Like why do I keep showing up? Really, it was in question. Like, you know what I mean? What I do was in question. I was like, God, how can I keep like showing up and talking like this and doing these things even when I'm afraid? Like, I hate public speaking and look what I'm doing. Like, how can I keep showing up to these opportunities and these spaces even when I don't feel inadequate or when I don't feel like I make enough money or have enough of a pedigree? Like, how? And I really believe like over the past couple of days, he's just like, you have the gift of faith. That is a thing. And like now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lean into that. Like what more then God can you do, right? But to answer your question, I think it's continuing to take risks and continuing that to trust that God is gonna meet me on the other side of that.
Yeah.
I don't believe he's gonna leave me. Have I felt like he's left me? Absolutely. Absolutely. But in my heart of hearts, I just know that can't be him because he doesn't lie. And he said what he was going to do, never leave me or forsake me.
Yeah.
So he can't, right? So even though I may feel forsaken sometime, I have to go back to what I know. Like when you know the word of God that's why it's good to know it for yourself, because you have to go back to it because your emotions and your feelings will have you thinking the opposite. And you have to go back to what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good word. So back to something you said earlier. What is one thing that you've worried about that you came close to worshiping?
Money.
Oh, okay. Jump into that. How did you? One, what was the worry? Was it you had too much, too little? I'm
Had
not
too
going to make
little,
more?
child. Too little. Didn't know.
And how did you pull yourself back from turning your worship towards money and away from God?
Okay. Two-parter again. Okay, so the first thing was too little. It was too little money. We talked about this. I remember like looking at my bank account like, what? Like I remember trying to figure out how I was gonna pay this, like literally choosing. And not wanting to go to my support system because it's like I should be old enough to do this by now. Like I got a kid, like I should be, you know what I mean? I remember that. And it wasn't too far. It wasn't too long ago. And yeah, like I remember that whole season. So it was money and it was really battling hustle culture, trying to, right? Because naturally it's like I'm a go-getter. I gotta make it, I gotta do it, and then God's like, but I will supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. So I literally had to like meditate in his word. What does he say about what I see as lack? What does he say about that? And I had to sit with his word. God, his word has kept me in many seasons.
Yeah.
Many seasons, every season, both good and bad. I have to go back to what I know. And the only thing that will not fail, the only thing that will not change is his word. And he promised me that I was the head and not the tail. So that's what I am.
Okay.
He promised me that I was the lender and not the borrower. So that's what you are. Y'all agree? Amen. Like that's what he promised. So, I had to go back to that.
Yeah.
But that's how I didn't worship. How I didn't worship a lack of money was going back to what he said about it.
Yeah.
Because then I end up worshiping his word and what he said, his
Yeah.
perspective on it, right?
That's good. That's really good. Here's one that's big, and I think this is actually a crucial question.
Like how big,
asked.
Jeremy?
Like this might take us to like 9:30 for you to answer
Wow.
this. How do you specifically see God's justice through real estate and housing in the neighborhoods and city of Richmond? It's a big one.
Oh, Jesus. There are other realtors in the room. I see it honestly as a work in progress, and we have a long way to go.
Yeah. We've got a lot of history, I mean, real
A
estate,
lot.
I think, is one of those places where you look at the history of real estate here, but really just like
Period.
across the nation.
Across the nation.
And you can see a ton of injustice, a ton of practices meant to push certain people down to keep them there for as long as possible.
Yep.
And you're actively bringing about God's justice by leading directly into those spaces.
Yeah.
So what do you see as your role? How are you trying to bring about God's justice into this particular industry?
So I'm educating people that look like me. Number one. Secondly, raising up other realtors that look like me. I want to walk in rooms and spaces and it not be like, hey girl, when I walk in, because there are other black women at the table, not just black people, black women that are at the table making these decisions and really like helping to build out justice in this city and throughout. So mine is twofold. Mine is not just getting clients and homes. That's the obvious one, right? But also educating them and helping them to know how to stay in that home and how to leverage it for wealth. Because that's the key, right? So not just, saying happy closing day and that's it. But like, do you know what you just did? Do you know how you just shifted things for you and your family? Like, do you know if you really maintain this and steward it well, it can be a whole like another thing. So we do that. Another thing that my company does is we are working towards making sure that every person that closes with us has the opportunity to get a will and have like the whole process. We are making sure that we are able to give them that for pennies on the dollar because we want to make sure that that their asset is protected.
Yeah.
So it's twofold for me. It's protecting my clients and helping them get in homes, but also helping raise up other leaders that look like me so that we can just duplicate.
Yeah.
Like I just want duplication everywhere.
Yeah.
Just like,
that's beautiful.
yeah.
And I like it. I've heard you say this previously. I don't know if you've said it directly tonight, but you've talked about the idea that what you're doing ultimately is helping everyone develop legacy.
Yes.
Right. This is what you're helping them by helping them find a home and keep a home.
Yes.
It's not just about there's now shelter for this family. There's now generational wealth for the future of this family.
That's right.
And there are so many layers that I think it's remarkable to me and I'm not in real estate or in sales or anything, but my mind, I'm task oriented, always goes to the next sale.
Yeah.
The next commission, the next deal. Yours is, I want to think about multiple generations from now.
Facts.
And how can what I'm doing with you today
Yep.
better their future?
Yes.
And I just think that is such a remarkable, and truthfully, that is a godly perspective.
Yeah.
You are looking far beyond your own time
Yeah.
and sowing genuine seeds for the future of these families.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful.
Praise God.
I don't even have a question. I just think
No,
that's
this is
beautiful. I think
great.
you're beautiful. I think everything about you is great.
This is great.
One last question, our
Okay.
last one for the night. How do you balance being in the world but not of the world?
Such a good question. Wow. I don't surround myself with like one or the other. Honestly, I have friends that are saved. I have friends that are not. And I like to be the neutral ground. I like to create space. So like me and my husband, it's like our thing to gather people. So we'll have parties and kickbacks and all the things. And so we have our friends that are saved and will like pray you down. And then we have our friends that are not and will like beat you down. I don't know. And it's great though because it keeps us grounded, but it also is space for discipleship. And it's space for people that that maybe are not following Christ to come to know him more and to be like, yo, like your friend, she really was cool. And y'all go to church every Sunday? Like, so it's like we like to create space for people. So that's kind of how I do it. I like to be the middle ground, if you will. Right. And almost like the host of spaces.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, y'all? Okay, good.
Awesome. Good. Well, these were great questions. I honestly wish we could just keep asking more and more and more because I love this conversation.
You're the best Oprah ever.
Thank you.
This is
Everyone
great.
gets a car. Everyone gets a pizza. How about that? We could go that route. Hey, I want to bring us towards a close here. We're not done just yet, but I need to ask you to hang with me. Can you hang with me for like 4.5 more minutes? Yes. Okay, awesome. Can we start our 4.5 minutes by giving the loudest round of applause of gratitude for Van-Neisha?